2018. Damn it. You can see the reflection of the lights in these glasses. Whatever. So we've come to the end of yet another year of movies, which means it's time for me to count down my top 10 favorite movies of the past year. And while most years it's pretty hard to cut down the list to 10, this year was kind of the opposite, as there were only a handful of movies that I really loved. But nonetheless, there's always great cinema out there to recommend, so let's knock out some honorable mentions. Shoplifters, a naturalistically acted and intimately directed Japanese film which lingers in the murky area between cynicism and hope in its deconstruction of family. Burning, a haunting character study puzzle box that swamps you with feelings of angst and anguish while still proving that Korean cinema is still at the top of its game. Cold War, a Polish film that is a simultaneously hopeful and bleak love story about broken people in a broken country, so poetically portrayed in stunning black and white. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, a jaw-dropping feat of animation balancing heart, humor, and the introduction of multiple iconic characters in one of the most comic booky movies I've ever seen. And First Reformed, a ponderous tableau of moral righteousness and religious purpose, anchored by one of the best performances of the year. So now that we got those out of the way, let's get started. Here are my top 10 favorite movies of 2018. To start off the list, we're going to talk about one of the most unexpectedly absurd movies in a year filled with a lot of weird movies. The Favorite is no ordinary period piece. It's filled with hilariously shocking vulgarity, otherworldly cinematography, and an astute perception of how sympathies as an audience kind of shift with the balance of power between characters. Yorgos Lanthimos' biting cynicism is put to really good use here. His trademark vulgarity and pseudo-formalism are really cleverly used in the mouths of these English nobility characters, highlighting their duplicity while emphasizing their hunger for power. The dialogue is freaking hilarious, and the three leads, which are so phenomenally portrayed by their respective actresses, are these unruly creatures in a world of a filmmaker who's fascinated with flailing, bloodthirsty, libidinal, and impulsive characters. Applying this director's trademarks to the etiquette of court and the tropes of the costume drama really gives way to this refreshingly weird yet beautiful take on the nature of power, which produces not only an insightful comedy filled with dry wit and uncensored bitterness, but also this understanding of human nature that bridges the gap between alienation and sympathy. Probing how the devastating nature of defeat and the impotent rage which it spawns can really rewire a person for the rest of their lives, Destroyer is as grounded and pulpy as a Michael Mann film, and as surreal and alluring as a David Lynch film. Director Karen Kasuma shifts between the present and the past, unspooling this satisfyingly twisted piece of noir storytelling in a bitter, sun-scorched LA. Detective Aaron Bell bears all the guilt-ridden tropes of the hard-boiled detective, only in a more nuanced female shell, which Nicole Kidman elevates to visceral levels with her hardcore performance. And I mean, Nicole Kidman really disappears into this role, not only under craggy makeup and ill-fitting wigs, but also in deeply felt melancholy and rage. She's a psychological and physical wreck, transforming herself into this vivid creature of discontent. And this is a bleak and grim movie, more a dark character study than a normal detective thriller. It's some of the best work from Nicole Kidman, unafraid to inhabit this really raw character, one who's trying to understand pain in a new way, and it's a movie you really don't want to miss. At the number 8 spot, I had a real tough time deciding which of these two movies was my favorite comic book movie of the year, but then I figured, this is my list. I can put both of these movies at number 8. Who cares? So half of the number 8 spot, Avengers Infinity War. It's quite obviously one of the most monumental moments in pop culture history, the culmination of a decade's worth of world building, character development, and fan involvement, and it lived up to the hype. It's action-packed, hilarious, and even emotional in the creative ways that it mixes together the characters of the Marvel toy box, and yet, for the first time, we're watching our greatest icons wrestle with the notion of true mortality, realizing that these characters, whom we've grown to love and understand, won't be around forever to protect us from the universe's greatest evil. And speaking of evil, Thanos is pretty dope. Thanks to this surprisingly affecting mocap performance from Josh Brolin that gives this character an air of eerie melancholy and pathos, really cementing him as the hero of his own story. The movie really moves at a kinetic pace, kind of like an impressive montage of greatest hits until that gut punch of a finale. You know what I'm talking about. And all that fun can really only be eclipsed by one other comic book movie experience that I had this year. And for me, the most fun superhero movie I watched this year, which is the other half of my number 8 slot on this top 10, is Aquaman. I know, right? And this movie wasn't perfect by any means, but I swear to God, if it came out in 2004, we'd be hailing it as one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. James Wan is a maestro behind the camera. Not only is this movie a technological and visual feat, but it amplifies a by-the-numbers hero's journey with some of the most inventive action sequences I've ever seen, and just a ton of fun. There's a palpable sense of glee permeating through Aquaman, the feeling that the movie is one-upping itself from scene to scene, winding its way through a story involving multiple fun villains, a dozen exotic locations, swashbuckling adventure, hard-won victories, heartwarming betrayals, arena combat, and in the final stretch, a go-for-broke battle on the ocean floor involving thousands of soldiers riding sharks and armored seahorses. I defy you not to be wowed by the spectacle of all this. My favorite movie of all time is Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men, and bear with me here, but I think that movie shares a lot of themes with his most recent film, Roma. Continuing Cuarón's exploration of the miracle of existence, Roma is the story of this maid to a middle-class Mexican family inspired by Cuarón's own upbringing. And I want to say that through that lens, this movie looks at societal structures and the upheaval of the capital city, but that just sounds dry and boring, while this movie is loud and funny and sad and so absolutely alive. The film assembles its narrative out of small moments. The camera pans slowly through various scenes to soak in the distinctive locale, and the hypnotic mute aesthetic creates this fresh kind of intimacy. And while the story is slight, it's the technical presentation through sight and sound that enable Roma to embody this crescendo of emotional release. The visuals are grand and epic, but the feeling is sweetly and even painfully personal. And like I said, thematically it might be the culmination of Cuarón's filmography, furthering his typical metaphors of birth, rebirth, and maternity. And quite bluntly, it recontextualizes all that to show us the beauty of life and the importance of enduring. It's on Netflix, so you really have no excuse to miss this one. Next up is another Netflix movie, and this is one that has stuck with me ever since I saw it all the way back last February. Annihilation is easily the most thought-provoking movie I saw in 2018. Almost a masterpiece that matches visual splendor with philosophical meditation. The visual effects of an alien force reconstructing life in an unconscious effort to suit its needs are terrifyingly beautiful to behold. And the revelation of life that grows by transforming other life without consuming it carries these earth-shattering implications for the ethics of being a living being that does live off destruction and consumption. But this is also a story about accepting one's personal damage, as the 5 women at the center of the story take part in this mission as an escape from their problems, and the terrifying truth is that sometimes annihilation is the only way for their pain to ever truly end. There's little more that I love than a sci-fi film that matches big genre ideas to tiny private ones, and textually, Annihilation perfectly matches its conceit to its characters, mapping an alien force that rewrites and mutates the DNA of everything it touches, with protagonists who have all suffered emotional traumas and losses that cause them to kill off a part of themselves. And the visual world that Alex Garland conjures here is remarkable. Keen cinematography and some of the most inventive production design ever put on film come together to display a cunning combination of the familiar and the fantastic, the grotesque and the gorgeous. It's an intoxicating cocktail, and it's unafraid to allow for multiple digressions and pit stops for visceral action and gut-churning body horror. It's equally pulpy and heady and quietly progressive on several levels, both as a female-centric blockbuster and a smarter alternative to the big-budget spectacle that we're used to. Following up the masterfully trippy Beyond the Black Rainbow, Director Panos Cosmatos offers us yet another stunning dose of psychedelic derangement with Mandy. Veering from astonishing, expressionistic exchanges to gory mayhem without an ounce of compromise, here's a movie where a cult summons biker demons to kidnap Nicolas Cage's wife, so then he forges a battle axe to exact revenge on them. Cosmatos takes this crazy framework and absolutely goes to town with it, delivering the slow burn hallucination one might expect from him during the first half, only to switch things up to an unrelenting and indulgent gore fest that might surprise you in the second half. The grainy 16mm imagery, a vibrant mixture of neon hues and shadows set to Jóhann Jóhannsson's disorienting score, presents this gothic fantasy unfolding within the confines of something that looks like a heavy metal poster. It's deliberately paced, ultra-violent, outlandishly stylish delivery system for Nicolas Cage's wild-eyed acting style, and when given the opportunity to explore his trademark manic acting and to delve into the raw nerve and primal insanity at the core of the human soul, there's really no actor quite like him. And Cosmatos somehow portrays Cage's intensity as a form of remarkably engaging pathos, allowing Mandy to be one of the most surreally heartbreaking movies of recent years. It's a psychedelic plunge into the heart of misogynistic darkness. It's fun, it's crazy, it's intense. Why aren't all movies like this? Middle school feels like it was both yesterday and a million years ago, and we don't have a lot of movies portraying those years of our lives. I think that's because the transitionary happenings of that age are too complex to dramatize honestly, but Bo Burnham's 8th Grade somehow perfectly captures the complications, feelings, and insecurities of middle school with striking precision. And I don't know how this guy so specifically presented the realism of being a 14-year-old girl, but his real gift is in lacing this film with the fears of that age while maintaining a sense that things will still turn out okay for her. And lead actress Elsie Fisher is a gem, inhabiting Kayla so completely that she never even seems to be acting. The unassuming honesty of 8th Grade is in allowing a change in the way teenagers exist on film, by letting every emotion finally feel as important as it does when you're growing up, and by showing how every bad day feels like the end of the world. In 8th Grade, Burnham and Fisher have really captured the tiny milestones of teenage life. Everything that happens to Kayla throughout the week of this movie, as trivial as it all may seem, is formative. Middle school was years ago, yet I still perfectly remember many of the triumphs and humiliations I experienced back then. Parents will tell you that these moments aren't the end of the world, but in that moment, they really are, and they resonate with you for the rest of your life. And to that end, 8th Grade is the most accurate and universal coming-of-age film that I've ever seen. I'm actually not a big fan of the classic film, which this next movie is a remake of, but maybe that makes it easier for me to process Suspiria as an instant horror classic and a masterpiece of layered storytelling. Not simply content to reconstruct Dario Argento's colorful slasher-ready kill sequences, Luca Guadagnino opted to craft a pensive, nearly 3-hour examination of revolution, artistry, trauma, psychoanalysis, and the power of women. It's impossible to ignore how skillfully Guadagnino dives into this material. Suspiria eschews the scary for the unnerving. It's more elegiac than it is creepy or gross. Things get twisted and build to a delirious finale that's debauched enough to satisfy even the most hardcore gore hounds, but Guadagnino undercuts, kind of even sabotages the scenes that threaten to privilege bloody spectacle over the river of sorrow that flows beneath it. It's light on jolts and holy shit moments, but the film prefers to make your skin crawl through the dull terror of memory, the red stain of guilt, and the sickening historical truth that the members of a witch coven are more likely to absolve each other of their collective sins than hold themselves accountable. Upon initial viewing, this movie is an overwhelming experience, a work of art every bit as complex and visceral as the mesmerizing production performed by the company of dancers in the movie. And every frame, every character, and each narrative pirouette in this reimagining is infused with significant meaning, making it near impossible to fully comprehend without witnessing it more than once. As a dense, defiant, confrontational work of artistic terrorism, Suspiria is a movie that begs multiple rewatches. It's a nightmarish lullaby, a ballet of feminist confrontation, and just so many more things that I can't wait to discover every time I revisit it. There was no movie which I had more fun watching in 2018 than Mission Impossible Fallout. This is one of the most exhilarating theater experiences I've ever had. One of the most viscerally satisfying blockbusters since Terminator 2, and easily one of the outright best action movies ever made, with each amazing action set piece one-upping the previous one. The Halo jump scene is one of the coolest things I've seen in any movie, and even that gets eclipsed by ensuing action sequences, like the motorcycle chase in Paris or the helicopter scene in the mountains. And as much as I can gush about the brilliant execution and incomparable excitement of the action in this film, I can't forget to mention that everything else about it is great too. The luminous, textured 1970s thriller-like cinematography that immerses us into this adventure. The moving, character-defining moments that make us care about the outcomes. The elegant and clever writing, it's all there, but the true genius of this latest chapter of the Mission Impossible franchise is in fulfilling a promise that its star has always made to us. Tom Cruise is a one-man supernova that is yet to burn out, and Ethan Hunt is likewise a man who refuses to let us down. Mission Impossible Fallout is a dexterous mixture of formal brilliance and movie star audacity that just can't be watered down. The movie rewards Tom Cruise's superhuman dedication to cheating death for our amusement, every detail calibrated to convey the full extent of his psychotic effort, and every sight and sound made for our entertainment and for our emotional reactions. There's a reason he's the ultimate movie star, and this movie is it. In recent years, I've really become encapsulated with the choices and contributions that a director makes when directing a film, and this next movie occupies the top spot of my list because it's really one of the ultimate examples where those directing choices elevate a film to something sublime. You Were Never Really Here is, on the surface, a movie about masculinity, trauma, and domestic abuse. On the page, it's like Taken crossed with Taxi Driver. But Lynn Ramsey's directorial choices, the ways in which she guides her cinematic eye, or the way she refuses to provide catharsis, or the way she treasures small gestures and whispered exchanges over exposition to construct a tapestry of melancholic emotions, creates a film about vulnerability, alienation, and empathy, somehow upending every tough guy action film convention to make a film about violence without ever glorifying violence. Several memorable sequences playfully toy with genre expectations as Ramsey taps into cinematic language rather than dialogue to explain the grief of our protagonist in this world. And dialogue is used as a weapon to disorient more often than it is to provide clarity, whereas framing and editing give us the most insight into the interiority of these characters, conveying emotion through the camera and the sound. Because of this, Joaquin Phoenix's mostly stoic presence becomes something to decipher through this visceral barrage of information. It resists the urge to turn subtext into text, instead trusting the audience to piece together the experience for themselves. It's a rewarding feeling that very few films have ever been able to offer. 89 minutes is all it takes for You Were Never Really Here to alter our perception of the world around us, and with such stylistically adrenaline-fueled and thought-provoking direction, an intriguing central performance, and an ambitious art house spin on the action genre, You Were Never Really Here is just a gem of a film and a cinematic triumph, and for that reason, it is my favorite film of 2018. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite movies of 2018. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know when the next time I'm going to be doing a Noodles Movies video again is, but whenever I do, I know you'll be here, I'll be here. So until then, click right over there to watch my top 10 favorite movies of 2017. Click somewhere down there to watch my original feature-length film, Guess Again, and right next to it to watch the trailer if you want. Thank you again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.